Hello my quilting friends! Leah Day here with a new video for the machine quilting party. Today we're quilting curving lines, one of the simplest designs that you can stitch with walking foot style quilting. So let's jump on the machine and I'll give you some tips for getting started. So I'm getting started with curving lines, and it's important to get started with a nice shallow curve. So I'm just gently pivoting my quilting space as I form that first curving line. And there's a reason why I want this to be fairly gentle, is that the deeper and more significant the curve, the more you'll have to stop and shift the foot around, and that'll take more time. So I wanted this to be a gentle curve, a simple, gentle curve. And I'm going to echo this 1/2 of an inch away, so I can use the edge of my walking foot as a guide. If I wanted a wider spacing, then I could put a guide bar on my machine, on my walking foot, and that would give me a wider spacing between these lines. But I really like the effect of a 1/2 inch spacing. So with that lined up, so this line of stitching that I've just done lined up with the edge of the walking foot, I'm just carefully stitching and trying to keep that edge of the walking foot in line. And then I do have to stop every once in a while and kind of lift the foot with my knee lifter. This is a bar on my machine that I just lift and kind of push against that. And that enables me to kind of take the tension off the quilt top. So that way, if the fabric is wanting to do anything weird underneath the foot, that's kind of releasing it. And it's also allowing me to easily shift and pivot the quilt slightly, so that way I follow that curve nice and even. So curving lines is kind of what I consider one of the baselines that you can stitch with a walking foot. So we've got straight lines, we've got zigzag lines, and we've got curving lines. And these three, I think, are the most simple and easy to stitch. And they also give you 3 beautiful textures to use on your quilts. You know, we've got curves, we've got zigzags, we've got straight lines. And with those 3 designs alone, you could do some really cool dynamic things. So I'm going to continue just echoing this line, and I want it to be spaced out 1/2 of an inch apart. So I kind of have to eyeball this. Now I could mark every single line on my quilt, or I could just simply stitch over and kind of guesstimate it. Then if I need to, lift my foot slightly and drop the needle exactly where this side of the foot is lined up right on the edge of that other line of quilting. So that's an option I often use, just eyeballing it, just kind of saying, that's close enough, we're gonna go with that. When I first stitched the designs and was just kind of planning and figuring out walking foot quilting in the beginning, I did a lot of marking, and I marked almost everything. And that took a lot of extra time, but you know, it was also good because I had the entire design marked and planned, and I didn't have to really think about it or guess where I was stitching or what I was stitching on the quilt. So there are definitely advantages to marking. I don't want you to feel like it's ever cheating or a bad thing to do. It's important sometimes to have lines marked so you get exactly the quilting design that you want to stitch on your quilts. You know, I couldn't have stitched the Love the Light whole cloth, for example, and I did this entirely with walking foot quilting, and I absolutely could not have quilted that without marking every single line on that quilt. It was necessary, absolutely. But as you can see, for designs like this that are very simple, it's possible to quilt without the marks and just use the edge of your walking foot or a guide bar on your walking foot and use that as a guide to space the lines and create evenly spaced, gentle curves on your quilt. So where will this design work best in your quilts? Well, this is an edge-to-edge design, so if you're going to stitch it over the entire quilt, I'd start in the middle and work your way outward. So let's say you're going to quilt this in the Prism Path baby quilt. I would start in the middle of the background areas and stitch the curving lines going in from the center to the outer edges, and then I'd return to the center and quilt curving lines in the opposite direction, and then I just simply echo that to both sides until it's completely filled. And you know, that might take a little while working from the center, but that's the best way to stitch it when you're on your home machine, so that way the quilt is continually moving outward and you're allowing that bulk to shift outward to the outer edges of the quilt. If you wanted to quilt it just in a section of your quilt, you could check out the Hugs and Kisses quilt where I stitched this design in one of the blocks, and I really think that came out good. You know, it's really fun to see what textures will look like both by themselves, and then, you know, if you double it, when you stitch curving lines and then stitch a second set on top of it, that becomes matrix, basically a curving grid. And that's one of my favorite designs that I'll be teaching you soon. And here's what it looks like whenever you finish curving lines. So that's it for this video. I hope you learned a lot quilting this design into this small square with me today. Now you might be wondering, how do we take a design from a small square to stitching it into a bigger quilt? Well, the simple fact of the matter is not all quilts have to be quilted all in one big piece. So the quilt behind me is Marvelous Mosaic, and that is what we are quilting along together in this series. So if you'd like to join in the fun and begin quilting out some walking foot style designs into small squares, which makes them really nice and manageable on your home sewing machine, all you're going to need to join in the fun of this quilt along is to pick up a copy of my book, Explore Walking Foot Quilting with Leah Day. Inside, you'll find the 30 designs that we're going to stitch together, along with the Marvelous Mosaic quilt pattern. So come and check it out at leahday.com/walkingfoot. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube so you don't miss the next video coming out soon. And also post your comments and questions. I'm here to help you learn more about machine quilting. Until next time, let's go quilt.